to read Shadow Slave Chapter 1. This is my first YouTube video, so you can support me. Let's start. A fragile looking young man with pale skin and dark circles under his eyes was sitting on a rusty bench across the police station. He was cradling a cup of coffee in his hands, not the cheap synthetic type slum rats like him had access to, but the real deal. This cup of plant-based coffee, usually available only to higher-ranked citizens and cost most of his savings, but on this particular day Sunny decided to pamper himself. After all, his life was coming to an end, enjoying the warmth of luxurious drink. He raised the cup and savored the aroma. Then he took a small sip and immediately said, "Ah, so bitter," giving the cup of coffee an intense look. Sunny sighed and forced himself to drink some more. Bitter or not, he was determined to get his money's worth. I should have brought a piece of real meat instead. Who knew actual coffee is so disgusting? Well, it's going to keep me awake at least. He stayed into the distinct dozing off and then slapped himself in the face to wake up. Huh? What a rip-off. Shaking his head and cursing, Sunny finished the coffee and stood up. Rich people living in this part of the city were rushing past the small park on their way to work, staring at him with a strange expression, looking at his cheap clothes and form, and from the lack of sleep, unhealthy, thin and pale. Sunny was indeed out of his place here. Also, everyone seemed so tall. Watching them with a bit of envy, he tossed the cup into the garbage bin. I guess what that's what 3 full meals a day would do to you. The cup missed the bin by a wide margin and fell on the ground. Sunny rolled his eyes in expression, walked over and picked it up before carefully putting it in the trash. When then, with a slight grin, he crossed the street and entered the police station. Inside, a tried-looking officer, giving him a quick glance and frowned with obvious distaste. "Are you lost, boy?" Sunny looked around with curiosity. Nothing noting reinforced armor plates on the wall and poorly hidden dirt nest in the ceiling. The officer too looked scruffy and mean. At least the police station remains the same wherever you go. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Sunny cleared his throat. "Oh, no." Then he scratched the back of his head and added, "As demanded by the third special directive, I am here to surrender myself as the carrier of the nightmare spell." The officer's expression instantly changed from the irritated to wary. He looked the young man over once again, this time with a piercing intensity. "Are you sure you are infected? When did you start showing symptoms?" Sunny shrugged. "A week ago." The officer became visibly paler. "Shit." Then with a hurried expression, he pressed a button on his terminal and below. "Attention! Code black in the lobby. Repeat, code black." The nightmare spell first appeared in the world a few decades ago. Back then, the planet was just starting to recover from the series of devastating natural disasters and subsequently resource wars. At first, the emergence of a new disease that caused millions of people to complain about the constant fatigue and sleepiness did not attract a lot of attention. But then, but when they started to fall into an unnatural slumber with no sign of waking up, even days later, government finally picked of course, but then it was already too late. Not that an early response could have made any difference. When the infected started dying in their sleep, their dead bodies turning into monsters. No one was ready. Nightmare creatures quickly overwhelmed national territories, plunging the world into complete chaos. No one knew what the spell was, what powers it possessed, and how to fight it. In the end, it was awakened. Those who survived the first trial of the spell and came back alive, who put a stop to its rampage. Armed with miraculous abilities and in their nightmare, this restored peace and created a semi-balance of a new order. Of course, it was only the first of the catastrophe brought upon the spell. But as far as the Sunny was concerned, none of it had any thing to do with him. Not only a few days ago, that is, when he first started having troubles with staying awake. For an average person, being chosen by the spell was was much of a risk as an opportunity. Kids learn survival skills and fight techniques in school on the off chance of the being infected. Well, to do families hire private tutors to train the children in all sort of martial arts. Those from the awakened clans even had access to powers, legacies, wielding inheritance memories, and echoes in their first visit to the dream realm. The richer your family was, the better your chances of surviving and becoming an awakened were. But for Sunny, who had no families to speak of and spent most of his time scrounging for food instead of going to school, being chosen by the spell presented no opportunity at all. To him, it was basically a death sentence. A few minutes later, Sunny was yawning while several policemen were busy putting him in the restraint, so he was fastened into bulky chair that looked like a weird mix between a hospital bed and torture device. The room were in was situated in the basement of the police station, with the thick armed walls and a formidable-looking wall door. Or other officers were standing near the walls with automatic rifles in their hands and grim expression on their faces. Sunny did not particularly care about them. The only thing he could think about was how much he wanted to sleep. Finally, the wall door opened and a grey-haired policeman walked in. He had a seasoned face and stern eyes, looking like someone who had seen a lot of terrible things in his life. After checking the restraints, the policeman glanced quickly on his wrist watch and then turned to Sunny. "What's your name, kid?" Sunny blinked a few times, turning to concentrate, then shifted uncomfortably. "Sunless." The old pal policeman raised an eyebrow. "Sunless? That's a strange name." Sunny tried to shrug, but found himself unable to move. "What is strange? What's so strange about it?" "At least I have a name. Back in outskirts, not everyone gets one." After another yawn, he added, "It's because I was born during a solar eclipse. My mom had a poetic soul, you see. That's why he got weird ass name, and his little sister was called Rain back when she still lived with them. At least whether it was the result of poetic imagination or simple laziness, he did not know." The old policeman grunted. "Do you want me to contact your family?" Sunny simply shook his head. "There is no one, don't bother." For a second there was a dark look on the policeman's face, then his expression turned serious. "All right, Sunless, how long can you stay awake?" "Ah, not long." Policeman sighed. "Then we don't have time for full procedure. Try to resist as long as you can and listen to me very carefully, okay?" Not waiting for a response, he added, "How much do you know about the nightmare spell?" Sunny gave him a questioning look. "As much as anyone, I guess." "Who doesn't know about the spell? Not the fancy stuffs you see in the dramas and here in the propaganda workers. I mean, how much do you really know?" That was a hard question to answer. "Don't I just go into the dream realm, kill a few monsters to complete the first nightmare, receive magic power, and become an awakened?" The policeman shook his head. "Listen carefully. Once you fall asleep, you will be transported inside your first nightmare. Nightmares are trials created by the spell. Once inside, you will meet monsters, sure, but you will also meet people. Remember, they are not real. They are just illusion, conjured up to you test conjured up to test you." "How do you know?" The policeman just stared at him. "I mean, no one understands what the spell is and how it works, right? So how do you know that they are not real? You might have to kill them, kids, so do yourself a favor and just think them about as illusion." "Oh." The old policeman waited for a second, then nodded and continued. "A lot of things about the first nightmare depend on the luck. Generally, it should be overwhelming hard. The situation you are in, the tools you have at your disposal, and the creatures you have to defeat should be within the range of your abilities. At least after all, the spell sets up trials, not execution. You are a bit disadvantaged at due to, well, your circumstances. But kids from the outskirts are tough. Don't give up on yourself just yet." Sunny was getting more and more sleepy. It was becoming hard to follow the conversation. "About those magic powers you mentioned, you will indeed receive them in if you survive until the end of the nightmare. What those powers will be exactly depends on your natural affinity as well, what you do during the trial, but some of it will at your disposal right from the start." The voice of an old policeman sounded more and more distinct. Sunny eyes were so heavy that he was struggling to keep his eyes open. "Remember, the first thing you must do once inside the nightmare is to check your attributes and your aspect. If you get a combat oriented aspect, something like a swordsman or an archer, things will be easier. If it is a reinforced by a physical attribute, then that's even better. Combat aspects are most common, so the probability of receiving one is high. The armed room was growling dimmer. If you're unlucky and your aspect has nothing to do with the combat, don't despair. Sorcery and utility aspects are useful in their own ways. You will just have to be smart about it. There are really no useless aspect. Well, almost. So just do anything in your power to survive. If you survive, you will be halfway to become an awakened. But if you die, you will open a gate from a nightmare creature to appear in the real world, which means that my colleagues and I will have to deal with it. So guys, unless already half asleep, Sunny felt a bit touched by the policeman's words, or at least tried not to die right away. The nearest awakened won't be able to get here for a few hours, so we would really appreciate it if you don't make us fight that thing over ourselves. What? With the last thought, Sunny finally slipped into a deep slumber. Everything became black, and then, in the darkness, a faintly familiar voice rang. Aspirin, welcome to the nice maze spell. Prepare for your first trial.